Are we surprised about this decision, Freddie? I'll start with
Of
you.
course we're not surprised because Victoria and Courtney, we talked about it for the longest time. Kyrie Irving is a lot of things. Stupid is not one of them. You can think whatever you want about Kyrie Irving, and at times I think he's too much into thinking he's the smartest person in the room. But he can get in touch with inner Kyrie Damas when he talked the whole thing being philosophical and opting in. But there was no way that anybody of his caliber was going to leave $36.5 million on the table to go to Los Angeles for $6.4 million in the mid-level exemption and the tax prices in California and taking more of his money away. He was not going to do that. But here's something else when it comes to Kyrie Irving. It's not so much about the money with him, even though a lot of times it is about the money. He knows exactly how to play this game. And people hate on him for it, and I get it. No one likes the fact that Kyrie Irving, when we're minutes away from football season, whether it's college or the NFL, NBA just ended, and Kyrie Irving is dominating the headlines because he knows how to play the game.
Yeah.
He knows that anything he says, anything he does, anything he puts out there, what's going to happen. Oh, what's he doing? What's he doing? What's he doing? He knows that. He understands that. And it's like from the movie, when it comes to the old Eddie Murphy movie, when it comes to Beverly Hills Cop, he knows that people are going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. That's why we're talking about it right now.
Here,
So, yeah, it's the money situation, but it's the focus. And he knows exactly, he knows how to make that one 5-letter word work in his favor, money, and the other 5-letter word work in his favor when it comes to focus. He knows exactly what he's doing.
What was the tweet that he said? Like, some people are leaders, world changers, whatever that thing was. Normal people. Well, does he? I guess no. He's never fallen into the normal people category, given everything he's done throughout his career. And he had 36.5 million reasons to opt into this deal. So I agree with Freddie. It's not a surprise whatsoever. And when you think about his leverage, what did he really have? I mean, he put a list of 6 teams out, one of which was the Los Angeles Lakers, which seemed to be the only team that was even remotely interested in bringing him into the fold. But he'd have to take a massive pay cut in order to do that. This
$30 million pay cut.
This is somebody who just lost a ton of money for not playing in a lot of games last year because of his choice to opt to not take the vaccine. And, money, look at this economy right now. Kyrie Irving's not dumb. He knows that he doesn't have the ability to do that. So the way that I look at it right now, I'm not surprised whatsoever. He loves the drama. He loves the storylines being about him. And this was a little bit of, a chance for him to kind of dominate the headlines. And there we go. It was a short-lived thing. The only thing I'm surprised about was that this didn't go up until 90 seconds before the dedeadline on Wednesday.
Yes, on Wednesday.
Well, he knows Broadway. He knows that you don't need
It's New York.
understudies. Exactly. He knows exactly all the old Shakespeare quote, all the world's a stage and we are merely players. Kyrie keeps playing people on this stage. He knows exactly. Think about this. He's 30 years of age. He just turned 30 earlier this year. And the wisdom that he knows how to make things work for him in whatever landscape it is, in the landscape that Steph Curry still dominates, LeBron still dominates, Kyrie Irving's always going to say, you're not going to forget about me. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be top of the mind awareness. $36.5 million, be damned in this situation. So, yeah, Kyrie Irving, you win the day once again. We'll see if he continues to win the day and bring a championship because that's what it's supposed to be all about in Brooklyn with the Brooklyn Nets and Kyrie Irving.
Well, before we get to the Lakers discussion, will Kyrie be in Brooklyn long term? That's the real question, and get a championship.
Freddie and I were talking about this pre-show. He's only 30 years old. I would have thought, given all of the headlines around this guy, how long he's been in the league, you think he's older than he is. He's got his best years of basketball still ahead of him at this point.
Right.
So he could play as long as he wants to. Will he is the question. This is somebody who's constantly chasing something. And what that is, the average person, you, me, Freddie, will not know. But only he knows. So whether he's going to get bored with what's happening here in Brooklyn, whether something's not going to go his way, and he's going to say, you know what, to heck with that, I'm going to go somewhere else. I mean, can we really trust what he says in terms of his destination? He did this in Boston, where he said he wanted to be there long term. He ends up bolting for here, coming to Brooklyn. If they don't win a championship this year, next year, within whatever time frame he wants to do it, who's not to say that he goes somewhere else? And, this is still one of the most prolific scorers in the game. In spite of all the drama around Kyrie Irving, he can attract free agents to go somewhere else. He can attract people who want to play with him and say, okay, if we can just put all of the drama and the ancillary stuff aside, when we get Kyrie Irving on the basketball court, he can do some pretty magical things. So if there's another destination, if there are other players who want to team up with him in the future that's not named Kevin Durant, I could absolutely see him going somewhere else and finishing his basketball career or continuing his basketball career somewhere else.
He's not going anywhere, and here's
No.
why. And here's why I don't believe he's going anywhere. Right. Kyrie Irving is a native of the metropolitan area. It meant a lot to him to come and play in this area, whether it was going to be with the New York Knicks or now the Brooklyn Nets. He always want to have a chance to do something like that. He's not just going to go away from this stage and play in Sacramento or team up with somebody else somewhere else. Being in this market, being in New York City, LA was not going to satisfy him, especially trying to have the whole, well, I said yesterday, the whole Jennifer, J-Lo, and Ben Affleck situation. He didn't want a part 2 of that with LeBron James and not for $6.4 million. Kyrie Irving clearly understands that he's going to get blowback and flack no matter what he does. But he also knows this. If you're not able to get this done in New York, if you're not able to get this done with the Brooklyn Nets, and let's call it as it is, the Brooklyn Nets are always going to be second in this city to the New York Knicks. And Kyrie Irving knows that. This is a way of bringing this franchise closer and closer to the headline line that the New York Knicks are always going to enjoy. I go back to when the New Jersey Nets made back-to-back NBA championships. You know what led the Daily News the day after they lost the championship? What can the Knicks do to get to the Nets level? That shows exactly where the totem pole is in this city with the Brooklyn Nets. But if you're Kyrie Irving, you're saying, yeah, I'm going to attract all this attention. They're not going to be paying attention to how it's a sad state of affairs the New York Knicks are. But you better win a championship with an organization that's desperate to win one, because that's the only way that the Brooklyn Nets will get anywhere near a New York Knicks line. If you're just having Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, Courtney, and Victoria, and you're not winning championships, then you know what you do? You become page 6. You become a gossip column. You're not a headline. You win a championship, and all of a sudden people look at you a whole different way. And don't think for 1 second that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, but especially Kyrie, they don't know that.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.